Hi, I'm going to introduce the interview that I've uploaded. It's an interview with Pam Flights, who was a choral director at Bullitt Central High School, just south of Louisville, Kentucky. And she was my choral director when I was a high school student, and she inspired me to want to be a choral director as well. And she has been involved within music education on so many different levels. So she was a high school choral director for many years, and then she went on to become a high school counselor, a guidance counselor, and then she became an administrator with the Jefferson County Public Schools and worked as the music supervisor. And now she is teaching at the University of Louisville and supervises student teachers. So she's had a taste and a flavor of music education from all those different perspectives. And I feel very, very honored that after she left teaching in that high school program, that I was able to come in and be a teacher there and continue her legacy and bring it to life for even more years after she left. And as you watch this video, I think it's very interesting to hear and see how she invested in this program when she started in 1982, and how she helped her singers reach for goals, and how she motivated them, and how she built teamwork and taught them work ethic. And her priorities were inclusiveness and being flexible so that you could accommodate as many students that wanted to participate in the program. I hope that you find some inspiration or just from insight into from a veteran teacher. And for any of us who had her as a teacher, we all consider her a legend because she created such a legacy there at the school and broader than in the community. She really had an impact on so many. I also find it really fascinating to hear from her perspective. She didn't intend to be a choral director. She came into this job looking to be a band director, and so perhaps if you don't feel like primarily that you're a vocalist, then maybe you can get some insights from her. And of course, I can identify with that as well because I did not think that I was a soloist or primarily vocalist because I wasn't. My main instrument was piano. Anyway, I also found it fascinating to listen to her perspective of what we teach students beyond how it affects them beyond the particular program that they're in. So the skills can be lifelong skills, and students can take those skills with them for years after they leave our ensembles or our music classes. And that's what we found out in a survey. So Pam started creating alumni concerts probably in the mid 2000s, and they've happened every 4 or 5 years, where alumni from her program would come together, and it would be like a reunion where we could see each other, but also make music together. And those experiences have been very special. And at the last one, I realized it was a unique opportunity to get perspective from so many alumni from one particular program. So we had 96 survey responses spanning 22 years of graduation dates, and we talk about that in the interview. So anyway, I hope you enjoy. So just to give us a frame of so this was back in 2016 at the alumni concert, the Bullitt Central Concert Choir alumni concert. And I brought this survey to distribute there at the rehearsals in the afternoon, and then also I had it available for anyone who wasn't at the rehearsal that would want to do it, to pick it up and do it there at the concert. But we had 96 responses.
I think that's great.
I know. It was almost everyone. I think there were maybe 100 or 120 in the choir. But, that's a really high response rate. So
and it was very interesting to read the percentages and the other things with kids. It was like, well, this is pretty cool. Especially what they became, like if they were an engineer or whatever. And so that was really neat for me too.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I would love to just maybe we should. I mean, let me ask you a few questions first, and then we'll go through the survey results. So, like, can you remind me what year did you start the program at Bullet, or what year did you start teaching at Bullet Central?
1982,
Okay, and
fall of 1982, and I taught piano, guitar. There was a chorus class and a class they called choral.
okay. So how did the program evolve into, what we knew it when I was a student there?
Wow. Um, it takes time to build a program. I think after 5 years, you kind of got a handle of everything. Um, it was a struggle for me when I first came because one of the biggest mistakes I made was not talking to the kids before I selected music and things like that. It just made it really hard on me. I didn't include them in decisions and let them have a voice. So anyway, that first year was really hard. They even had a petition to get rid of me. So
What?
yeah, but I had those, few that wanted to hang in with me that I really appreciate. And we had a really good first year. Okay. But once again, I just think it takes time. Okay. I think you've got to build relationships first. Um, let the kids know that you care. Um, and I've made comments with that on some of the other things that you've said here. But I just think the first the first day was you got to be prepared for better than I was prepared for. And if I had to go do it again, I would completely change that. And that's what I teach my kids.
Mhm,
First day is so important
mhm.
of how you have the relationship with your kids. Um,
So can you talk about, like, do you have any, like, specific, like, strategies, or looking back on it, how do you remember that you actually built relationships?
um, I'd meet them when they came to the door. Good morning, how are you? What's your name? Okay, whatever, and that type thing, and just ask them how they were doing, you know, um, which at first they didn't want to talk to me, of course, but that's that part of the building the relationship, I think, with kids and letting them know that it's obvious that you care about them. I think looking back, I think that's the biggest thing is because once you get them to care, then they want to be involved and they know team playing. I tried to teach more than just music, good work ethic, being successful, working with others. Those are the basic things. And I just did that through teaching music.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's one of the things I wanna come back to you is
Okay.
with those carryover skills, other things that they learned besides the music in your class. Like, well, how do you so besides building that relationship, can you think about how else you improved as a teacher?
I took lessons because my degree was K through 12 and instrumental, but I had to take choral classes too. But I just really didn't. I took this job thinking that maybe I would get the band job because Mr. Hurdy would retire in a couple of years, and I think that's what they were thinking too. But after the 4 years, it's like, no way. I love this. I was improving. The kids were improving. I felt like I was building a program and I did not want to change. And so, I took lessons, I went to conferences, I had mentor teachers that were choral people that would help me out. So I think that we've got to continue being learners our whole career. I mean, I'm still learning now from about things. So I think that's just the process, and I'm an example for the kids too. I think I have to be the example I want to see.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's fascinating, Pam. I knew that you were a percussionist coming into that choral job, but I didn't realize that you had your eye on the band job, perhaps. And that
Well, and I
might
did. I think that's why
be
they hired me. And I was like, okay, I can play piano, I can play guitar. The choral stuff. I had a very small choir to start off with, or chorale or whatever, and very small chorus. So, I thought, I can do this. Okay. It's like staying one step in front of the kids, sort of, kind of.
Yeah.
I was more than one step ahead of them. But I think it was trying to bring them in to being okay with chorus, especially with kids that didn't want to be in the chorus class that they just put in there. Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's winning them over. And, I'll be honest with you, you know, the literature that we picked or that I picked, it had all types of things. Like when we did park dinners, that was for the community, brought them in. They loved that. But then we also did serious stuff like Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that type thing. So I think you have to really look at your community and your kids. Everybody had a blast with the pork dinners, and that was it. That was the purpose of that. To have a lot of fun with that, and I think that carries over because in the spring, everybody really wanted to do more serious stuff because we sound so much better on it.
Yeah.
So, but still, I think there's a process that you have to follow, and you got to be patient of what you want to do.
Yeah. That's
So,
good advice.
yeah.
Now that big show or those, dinners back in the day when you had them in the cafeteria, that was a great tradition. Um, were there other traditions that you purposefully created or some that just kind of happened by accident?
Um, hmm. Well, we'd always try to take a trip.
Mhm.
Okay. And I think that was tradition, especially at the very beginning when I had kids that never been to the ocean.
Yeah.
It was so special for me because they just got off the bus and ran in with their clothes on and just got in the ocean.
Yeah.
So I think a tradition kind of started with that, and that, it was more of a reward than it was of their hard work for the year. Now, I've had to cancel before, which about broke my heart, but they just did not perform the way they needed to. Or we would take a much smaller trip. I think we did Cincinnati once, Kings Island or something. But I think that builds teamwork to know that this is the goal we want,
Mhm.
and this is what we have to do to get to that goal, and let them create that. So, what do we got to do to get here? Well, we've got to have good rehearsals. We've got to learn our music. They'll come up with all those things, and that's that ownership part that I think you create when um, they have a goal. Don't I won't create it. They create that.
Yeah.
So they
So
have that ownership.
so you're actually that was also one of my questions. I think you're actually taught also explaining like how you motivate the students. You're saying that you help them self motivate or how they could help motivate each other.
Yeah, and I think you learn that over time, and they probably don't even realize it.
Mhm.
And I think also too, I mean, I had this little trick at the beginning was that, I can take more girls if I get more guys in choir. So they'd go out and recruit the basketball team and football team, which, it was great. If they could just match pitch, I took them, because they would grow through that. But, it was conflicts that they had with basketball practice after school. And, they would end up um, not coming to choir class after school if we had rehearsals. But they agreed to come the next morning before school to learn what they didn't get. And I
Mhm.
think giving kids options like that, I don't want anybody. I wanted a win-win situation. I would have lost those boys if I were not allowing them to come and make it up. And that was good for the girls too, if they had, sports. So I think you have to be very flexible with that type thing and be a partner. And I think too, I always had a good relationship to the um, coaches because of that. So,
Yeah.
which is important.
That's great. So are besides that, being flexible and I mean, I love that if I can take more girls in here if we get balance. So
Yeah.
that's probably the best recruiting tool, period. But were there any other recruiting tricks or tips that you
Well,
remember
I
success?
think the more your kids perform in school, we used to go around at Christmas and drag the piano around and sing Christmas carols, and um, getting your faculty also involved with things too, and being out there. is the thing. And I think we got a lot of parent support when they all came to the pork dinners. They loved Christmas. They loved Thanksgiving. Um, and so then when we came to the spring, it wasn't as much performing as it was preparing for KMEA, but still we developed that. And I think the more you can get out to the public and see things and do things for them, they're going to be very interested in wanting to come see the choirs
Yeah.
and can be more supportive of the choirs.
Yeah. Boy, it's taken me back. I love hearing your perspective on these things. So,
Well, Eva, that day that we were doing at the Round Earth, and
yes.
that was just, I couldn't believe it, jumping off the chair. That's such a memory for me of hearing you all sing that and getting that note and nailing it, and I was just like in tears.
You know what I did this morning is I YouTubed that piece just to kind of put me back in the frame of mind. So at the Round Earth's Imagined Corners, I had to look up the composer. I think it's Spencer. Anyway, I listened to some recordings of that, and it took me back, and I remember the impact of your enthusiasm. Like, if I could sum up, in my opinion, if I could choose one word as to why that program was so successful, I think it was because of your enthusiasm, and that's just one example that shows
Well,
it.
thank you. I kind of feel like that too because, like I said, you all have to feed off of me, and trying to get my student teachers to see that they have to, your kids have to see what you want them to see and replicate that. And some days we're all tired, but I have to, your teacher has to be the one that does that, or it'll be days that you won't be able to get your instruction across, or the kids won't participate. So
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so well, now let's talk about the like these non-musical effects, or um
okay, I did write that down. I think lifelong skills, and part of that would be working with others, strong work ethic, respecting others. I think all of that we had in that choir and in that group because the kids didn't tolerate other stuff, the bullying and that type of thing. I really never noticed that in choir. Now, it could have happened outside of choir. I don't know. But, I'm hoping that um, that's one of the biggest things that I learned because, my parents gave me a good work ethic, respect to others, that type thing. And I just wanted to make sure they did that because I really think that they carry that through their whole life. So,
that's obvious. Like, we know that they're going to need that when they go out to whatever job that they have. But then to have them this many years later document that on this survey, I found that really amazing. So some of the survey questions I had, written out for them and asked them to like choose from between 1 and 5. But the one that I found most fascinating was the open-ended question, which was what skills, knowledge, or dispositions were developed in choir that are useful to you in your current profession. So I went through those responses, and then I just kind of grouped them according to what themes that I saw, and then what I sent to you, I put them in order of like the most responses that related to something to do with like this theme. So just to go through them, the first or the most responses were somehow related to human relations or communication. And then the second was self-confidence or something related to confidence.
awesome.
And then the third was discipline. And then the fourth was some kind of social aspect. The fifth was leadership. The sixth was stress management. The seventh was listening and responding to others. And then the last was just simply somehow love of music.
Cool.
And then I kind of just put like what they listed as their current profession along with what kind of comment they made, to see the variety of things that people are doing in their life and how it relates back to that one thing that they can remember that they learned in choir. I found that to be fascinating.
I do too. I do too. I think it's great.
Anything Was there anything surprising to you about those themes that emerged? If I broke them down, and like it might be like something to do with relating to other people, And then a second theme, something to do with yourself, like managing yourself, discipline, or confidence about, yourself and your ability to do whatever.
Yeah.
And then the third, music. I mean, is there anything that's surprising you about that, or is that
You
kind of
know,
expected?
after all these years, and most of my Facebook friends are my former students. And
Mhm.
so just to look and see what they're doing with their kids and what they're doing with their lives, I guess I had a head start on that as far as looking and seeing what they're doing and excited about what they're doing with their kids and with their life. And, so I'd like to think that I was a little bit, or the choir was a little bit, um, that helped that grow. So,
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Well, one of the things that surprised me the most was, um, that first relation about human relations and communication. A U.S. Army officer wrote that it helped deal with some psychological challenges when dealing with differences in people. In the Army, people come from everywhere, and being in choir helped me develop a sense of acceptance for everyone.
awesome.
Isn't that great? I just love
Awesome.
that. I really love that. So then the other kinds of questions were these Likert type scale where I gave a statement and asked them to agree or disagree, or say, little to influence to a lot of influence. And the first question was, did your participation in the choir influence any of the following? And so then we've got like encouraging others to sing, singing to your children, attending concerts, singing in a community choir or a church choir, singing or playing in a band, teaching music to others, or singing in a college choir.
So I think administration, support of the teachers, other teachers, and support of the staff is so important. I
Yeah.
tell my kids, the three big people you need to get close to are your janitors, your lunchroom ladies, and your secretaries.
Oh,
Because principal can be out of the building for a week and you never know it probably.
right. That's
So,
right. Because it's those
but
other people that really keep it going on a day-to-day basis.
right, and
Yeah.
you've got to be supportive of them. So, you bring them donuts or your cookies or whatever, to let them know that they're important. So,
Yeah, that's right. Well, one of the things that I loved so much, because I sent the results to you on that first question. Like after I got all the results, then I put them in order as to like what scored the highest. I mean, I know we didn't ask them like to rank these things, but I put it in a ranking looking at the end. But you know what
okay.
made me so happy to see at the top was encouraging other people to sing.
Yes.
And that just made me so happy. And then the second was that might be related, but singing to their children. If there is nothing better than that, I
No,
just find
there's
it so
nothing there.
precious. Yeah.
And that's why I kind of have the kids come up at the beginning and sing something
Oh, yeah.
really
Yeah.
easy, so that they can get up and perform and have everybody applaud to them. That it's a huge crowd, and that they can see that and do that encouragement of that. So hopefully one day they'll want to sing.
Yeah, exactly. Give them a little taste of that.
That's right.
And, but, as music teachers or ensemble teachers specifically, like we don't really know. I mean, like you said, you can see them on Facebook. You know that your students are out there being productive and contributing to your communities. But most of the music education research doesn't really document the effects of that ensemble
Huh.
participation years later. And I think this is a great testimony to how it has affected them, by encouraging other people to sing or singing to their own kids, or even encouraging them to go to concerts that they might not
Right.
otherwise uh, attend to. So anyway, I found that really fascinating. And then the second question was like, of course, based on your memories many years ago, but you know, what most influenced you to actually join the choir? And the number one response was love of music.
Hmm.
And from what I've seen so far in the literature, that seems to be a consistent theme for almost any kind of survey that's done with, like adult community ensemble members or people that, like are regular subscribers to like arts events or whatever. That's a common theme. But it did, I mean, it didn't surprise me, but I was very happy to see number two was the director.
And I believe that, you know, uh, I don't want to be arrogant about that, but I do believe I made the situation where it was inclusive and you felt comfortable when you came in. Would not I do it all over again. You know, they asked me, "Would you teach again?" I said, "In a heartbeat. I wouldn't change a thing." So it was enjoyable for me, and I think it was enjoyable for the kids, and I think we all learned things. So
For sure. I know that. I know that myself. Yes. All right. And then I asked them, what do they remember to have effects on them while they were actually a high school student? And their first rating was enjoyment, quality of life, and then followed by a sense of achievement. And then some of these other things that are, correspond to that open ended question. But then the third taught me teamwork. Fourth helped form peer groups or friends. And then fifth, improved self confidence. And then sixth, kept me engaged in school. And then after that, self discipline, work ethic, cope with anxiety. And then at the end, made me just aware of life consequences, or, consequences of choices.
Mhm.
Was anything surprise you in the order of how those things results came out?
Well, I know kids have told me that they came to school for choir. I mean, I know that was their motivation to come. And I know that there were situations where it was rough at home for some kids. And, they would talk to me about that. And, that choir was one thing that kept them in school. I see that on there. I believe the one with anxiety is true. I mean, that's even used today. I mean, I do that. Um, and then the last one, I guess, made me more aware of consequences, life choices, and dangerous behavior. Hmm. Maybe that one was a little surprising.
Well, I was not surprised, as you said, but to see that the keep me engaged in school was, I mean, it wasn't one of the top answers here, but it was definitely not at the bottom. So just
Yeah.
to know, I mean, like you said, some kids would tell you that, but I say probably a lot more didn't say that to us, when it was really true, that kept them engaged in school.
Well, and two, they had to be passing classes
Right.
be able to go and do things. So I think that was that little carrot and motivation. They didn't have to make great grades, but they had to be passing their class.
Mhm.
So I know that helped some of them, but not the majority of the students. There was just only a couple that I can really remember that, I had to, the teachers would come talk to me about, or I would, talk to the kids about too. So, um, but that's part of that work ethic. That's part of that being responsible, teamwork, knowing that if we had five sopranos gone, it's like not having any football players to play, just the quarterback,
Right.
So I think they understand that too. And that might have been a little bit of motivation for them to um, keep their grades up. But I don't know. That's, I don't know. I
Yeah,
just think that that all matters.
it does. It does.
Teamwork.
Well, and then the last question that I put to them was, what which of the following had the biggest impact on your high school choral experience? And then right there, number one, that's exactly what we were talking about earlier in this chat, is the director's passion or enthusiasm for music. That's it. Number one. And then closely right there with it was the ability to connect with students. And that's exactly what you mentioned, that you spent so much time doing in your first few years of teaching,
Mhm.
which is related to your ability to motivate them. But you know what I thought was interesting was down the list a little bit was the ability to teach vocal skills. So this is a choir, it's all about singing. And that wasn't as important as those other things, as being able to connect, motivate, and just show enthusiasm.
And I agree with that to a certain extent. I mean, I think your choir has to grow, you know, technically, skill wise, and everything. Because if it doesn't, then if you go to festival, and that's not the most important thing. I think festival just showcases what you know, and that's why picking music with the ability of your students is very, very important because you want them to be successful, even if it's an easier piece.
Hmm.
So I think that's part of that success. And I didn't learn that my first year. I got smart and was like, let me see what these guys can do. And so my second year, I started looking at that closer and they became more successful because that was my choice of music. And I think that's one of the biggest flaws that all music people do at the beginning is they have an idea of what they want to do. So we talk a lot about pre-assessment when they go in. Let's assess this. Maybe not the first day, just get them singing, but you need to know what they know and what they don't know. You don't need to reteach things they know, but you do need to review on things that they don't know and gradually put that into your lesson.
Yeah.
But that was one of the biggest mistakes I made. And I did put that, if you were going to ask me that, and talking, do more listening than talking. That is so important to listen to your kids. I didn't really have the opportunity, or I just didn't take the time my first year to listen to them, what they liked and what they didn't like and what they want to do. And, you know, I wasn't taught that. And I spend a lot of time with my kids now, talking about the first day of school. And they have to write a lesson plan on what they're doing the first day of school, and how are they going to pre-assess what these kids can do and what they don't do, and what they know and what they don't know. That'll make it so much smoother for them if they do that,
Mm.
and really start day one on building relationships. Ask them, their name, depending on grade level. If it's elementary, do you have a favorite pet? Do you have a whatever. And so I have learned a lot. But through my mistakes, I don't consider them as failures. I consider them as learning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
And I try to tell my kids there's no such thing as a failure if you don't try to correct it. You'll fail if you don't go in there with something else, but it's not really a failure if you go and correct that part. And so, hopefully they caught on to that. I learned the hard way, but it was good. It was good that I learned that many years later.
Yeah. That's really good advice. Yeah. Well, at the bottom of that list was things that I was actually relieved to see, like, the traveling and the financial resources and the equipment stuff, that wasn't as important to them, because that just
Yeah.
reminds us that even if you're at a school where you don't have a big budget, your families are maybe struggling financially, I think this really shows what really matters. And the fancy stuff, the big trips, the fancy shells or the equipment for the, all that doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Well, they didn't get the auditorium built until my last year there. So our performances were usually in the cafeteria, and we'd have to decorate, and that was fun because everybody helped the decoration part of it. And then, we always would sing at the First Baptist Church, was a perfect venue for that. But I think that at the beginning, when we did the stuff in the cafeteria, was fun. Setting up the stuff, painting the backdrop, doing all that type thing, because it had a lot of student involvement too. But it was fun, and I think they really enjoyed seeing their families. And granted, if we'd have, I think my last year there, I was able to do it in the auditorium, um, which to me was kind of let down because I had so much fun otherwise. There wasn't a lot of student involvement in that one, getting that ready.
Mhm.
So, because we didn't have a backdrop, I think we just had stuff on the curtains or whatever. Yeah. But the more student involvement you can get, the ownership is just there, and that makes it all better. Makes it all better.
Yeah.
Anything a kid can do, have them do it. It's my philosophy. Like, come on, kitty, kitty. Say hello to
Oh,
Eva.
there. Uh, well, that's pretty much the main things I wanted to go over with you. And throughout this conversation, you've given, like, because my last question was, do you have any other tips for, like, directors who are trying to establish a successful problem? Oh, maybe, let me ask you that. What would be how would you define a successful program? Like, what would you say?
Well, I think you have to be inclusive. I would think a lot of directors don't want to take kids that struggle with matching pitch, but if you work with them and I think it being inclusive is very important
Hmm.
because I had a big range of, I didn't have a lot of soloists, but I had a lot of choral kids that could sing in a choir very well, but they might not be a soloist, and that's okay because so I think you have to be very inclusive. I had a beginner group, of my last year, I think I had like 47 chorus kids. But I had made a deal with the counselors then, not they're important to know, that they rearranged what kids I wanted in each of the choir classes, and then I told them they could put as many kids as they wanted to in the chorus. Well, they jumped on that. But that was a lot of kids to have in that room. But by then I was really pretty good at selling them a lot of stuff, and let them pick out of JW Pepper what they might want to sing, and you know.
Yeah.
So I'd had a beginner group, advanced group, and then I think too, once again, to have a supportive staff, administration, and teachers. But you've got to get out there and let them know what's on. So invite them back. I met my first year. I invited. We had just a little info concert. That I went through and was talking about what we taught and had them sing a little bit. And Mr. Valentine came.
Yeah.
That was the first thing. He always teased me. So, well, I had to hire these people to come listen to you, but he was kind of part of me on that, but I know he wasn't. But you have to provide opportunities for teachers, students, administrators, and parents to see the kids, not just once a year, not twice a year. Come up with some other things that you can do. Sing at a PTA meeting, sing at we did some of the Christmas stuff at board meetings. We were invited to come over there. So I just think you have to show off your kids. Let them speak for you.
Mm.
Let them be the ones that are showing off. You don't have to say a thing when you get your kids out there. So the thing the nuggets of advice to new choral directors is go in listening and not telling. Pick music that your students can be successful with. And that's really the two big things. And then of course we're building relationships. That's kind of towers over everything.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
that's
great. That's great advice, Pam. It's so fun for me to know that your words are not just words. They have so much meaning and experience and real life behind them. And I can't remember exactly, but it was within weeks after joining that choir my senior year, because I had enough electives to do band and choir. Within weeks that I realized that I might be able to do this, and I liked, in my mind, I liked the idea of being a choir director already better than being a band director, which I had just kind of assumed that's the path that I was going on.
that's me too. But yeah.
Yeah. It's because I think you really hit on something important there, because I did not consider myself a soloist. I didn't want to do solos, but I felt so empowered by being in a group that the kind of music that we could make as a group was way more impactful, I thought, than what you could do as a soloist. So I just, it just resonated with me, and I just, can't even believe that there would be anything else that I would want to do after those first few weeks of being in your choir.
That's sweet. That's very nice. It makes me feel really good. Thank you.